I am sorry that due to having caught COVID, I cannot be with you in person on this Remembrance Sunday morning. But my theme today is remembering. How far back can you remember? I think I can recall patting the head of a horse in a field that was built over soon after I was 2 years old. But can I really remember it? Or was I told it? And now I have made it part of my life story. I cannot tell. But now it's part of me and who I am. Some years ago, I read a book called Death and Memory. It was about the things that Anglo-Saxons placed in the graves of their dead. What archaeologists find in a burial is a product of choice and selection. Put in this brooch, but not that one. This sword, but not that knife. These pieces of food, but not other ones. These items of clothing, but not those. This is because mourners choose what to remember, and, though they may not quite think of it in this way, what to forget. Because what is remembered says something about the person remembered. It also says something about those remembering. It says something about the beliefs and values of a community and about wider society. One archaeologist said, a grave is a burial with attitude. So is memory. What we remember helps define who we are. There are personal experiences. I am a mixture of 63 years of remembered experiences. You are a mixture too. And there are family stories. I passed on to my children a story from my father, who saw bombers over North Somerset in World War II, flying on the famous air raid on Bath. My grandfather seeing a captured World War I tank in South Wales, where my family were coal miners. There are local community traditions and histories. The names on a war memorial, or the stories told by older members of the community of their experiences. There are national stories shared by millions, things like Remembrance Sunday and the wearing of red poppies. These give us common connections. They are things we share in, things that characterise us. Because what we remember helps define who we are. And remembering is integral to Christian faith and witness. Our reading from Luke 22:14-30 reminds us of this. Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." We are people with a present and a future because we have a past. And remembering that past reminds us of God's actions, past, present, and future. And it defines us. As on Remembrance Sunday, we recall those who sacrificed themselves for us. We are reminded of the supreme sacrifice of Jesus, as recalled in that reading from Luke. And honest memory, recalling both the good and the bad, reminds us of the faithfulness of God in all the complexities of life. It reminds us of the triumph of grace. There was pain and betrayal referred to in the passage from Luke. But God's love triumphed despite that. But as a national community, remembering is not always an easy matter. There can be conflicts between some memories as they are held by different groups. There are issues over who is doing the remembering, who decides what and who will be remembered. Do we remember things as they were, or as how we think, even wish they were? Remembering can be a difficult business. What starts as a conversation about the past can turn into an argument about the present. But it is a vitally important conversation or argument. As Christians, we are committed to facing up to life in all its complexities. We are committed to the whole picture, even if it is uncomfortable at times. Recently, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission admitted that, despite its statement that all are treated equally in death, across Africa, thousands of black soldiers were put into mass graves, some not even marked by a monument. It is now being rectified. The Black Lives Matter movement has challenged us to address the sometimes selective nature of remembering. For example, 25% of the soldiers fighting for the British Crown in World War I were Indians. Over 250,000 African soldiers and porters, as well as approximately 750,000 African civilians, perished, mostly in African campaigns that are unknown today outside of Africa. This is comparable to the terrible casualty figures of about 994,000 UK citizens, soldiers and civilians who died in World War I. But who here remembers the Africans who died for the British Empire? Memory can be very selective and revealing. Today I wear my black poppy with my red poppy to remember those who have often been forgotten. It is an act of remembering and of justice. So, let us today remember because we are grateful. Grateful for the courage of others, of all who have faced danger and death to defend our society and values. Grateful for the self-sacrifice of others. Grateful also for ideals worth defending. And where memory has been selective and partial, let us be people who address this, even when it's uncomfortable. Let us remember because we recognise our responsibilities. As Christian people, to work for peace, justice and reconciliation. To welcome the refugee and the homeless. War causes immense suffering in the world. We have a responsibility to assist the victims of war, those displaced by war, in the 21st century. Compassion does not recognise borders or ethnicity. You may recall the parable of the Good Samaritan and its counter-cultural message. We remember because we resolve not to repeat. Some of you will have visited the cemeteries of the First World War. Perhaps the white headstones and monument at Tyne Cot near Ypres, or the Menin Gate, covered with the names of those who died fighting in the Ypres salient who have no known grave. Or perhaps it is the Simla Memorial at Thiepval, looming over the killing ground of the Somme. Or perhaps it's Langemark German cemetery in Belgium. Unlike the bright and open British cemeteries, it is dark and mournful, defeated and in shadow under brooding oak trees. Its grave markers made from dark stone. The mass grave there contains the bodies of 24,917 soldiers in a space the size of our church hall. It's a reminder of the tragedy of war. War betrays lives. At Langemark, 3,000 schoolboys and university students, volunteer young soldiers, were killed in October-November 1914. In Germany, it became known as Du Kindermord, the massacre of the children. As we recall these things, There is an urgent need, a pressing need, to learn lessons and to resolve not to repeat old mistakes. And in an increasingly polarised and fractious world, it is our Christian duty to speak out for peace and cooperation between nations. At times, that can be a counter-cultural message. But the gospel was always thus. We Christians are a remembering people. Today, we find ourselves living in uncertain and unsettled times. Around the world, anger and divisions are once again very apparent. In these times of turbulence, let us as Christian people not grow careless with peace. And let us never forget the difference that we can make. Because what we remember is that God is in it with us. The passage from Luke reminds us of the triumph of love and of service. Jesus recounted the pride and power of the world and said, "But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves." It is, he says, this, not pride or power, that will prepare his apostles to sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. It is selfless service that leads to greatness in God's kingdom. So, on this day, when we remember the service and the sacrifice of others, let us commit ourselves anew to lives of loving service, to bring the love of Christ into a broken world, to work for peace, to speak out for justice. However dark a situation we find ourselves in, by God's grace, let us be the ones who light a candle. So, light that candle. Be that candle. So we do not just rage against the darkness. We are called to be the difference. Because Jesus, the light of the world, is in us and with us. That is a powerful thought to remember on Remembrance Sunday. Amen.